think of it like riding a wave. When you're
Yeah,
surfing, you don't know what the wave's gonna be like, but whenever you see it, you got to get ready and you got to adapt. I feel like that's any good business. You do that.
Josh here with the Bright Business Podcast. I'm really excited today because we have my friend Jonathan Malm. He's an author, serial entrepreneur, new father, and man, he's got books. He's got all kinds of stuff going on. And specifically, what I love about what he does is, he really resources the church overall. And Jonathan, I'll let you share more. Tell us about who you are and what you do.
Yeah, I live in San Antonio, Texas. I got a wife. I got two kids, two boys. One is 3 months. One's 3 years, and so that's fun. That's a fun adventure. I have an Airbnb a little bit down the road, which is
Nice.
not really church related in any way. But then I've been a part of a lot of projects that help churches. So churchdesignIdeas.com was one. I turned that over to someone else maybe a year and a half ago. That was probably my first one that people might recognize me from, and then started SundaySocial.tv, which is basically social media graphics for churches. It's kind of social media content more for churches to use. I've written quite a few books to help churches. There's The Volunteer Effect, which helps churches get, keep, and motivate their volunteers. I've written The Comeback Effect, which is all about hospitality and creating an environment where first-time guests want to come back. Don't Burn Out, Burn Bright helps. I don't know. I believe that even though we see burnout so often in the church, that burnout is not inevitable if you work in ministry. So, yeah, there's my books right there.
Yeah.
And then a few others there that are available. But yeah, those are the main books. And then a newest project that I am doing is called Pastor Rev, which is basically AI sermon prep tools. It's really cool. Me and a friend had this idea to basically use AI to help pastors research, get ideas, kind of reorganize their thoughts. So some really cool tools available there.
That is awesome, man. That's a lot of tools, a lot of resources that you have developed. Where did this passion, not only to serve the church, I mean, that's one thing and it's great to be able to volunteer your time and to serve in a church capacity, but for you to be able to put these creative assets out into the market that can be used by thousands and thousands of churches, where did this desire come from?
So I grew up a pastor's kid, a missionary kid. We lived in Guatemala for 6 years. My dad was always a pastor or in ministry in some way. I never saw him have a traditional job. So I think it was kind of like outlined for me from the beginning that like there's no such thing as a traditional job, which is funny because my wife is the exact opposite. Her dad is a professor. Everyone in her family is doctors, lawyers, a judge, like all the traditional, like they live in Argentina. But yeah, so I've never seen it kind of a traditional role, and I've always seen like, okay, let's try things. Let's try this. Let's try that. I worked at a church, and I just started creating the tools that I wish I had working at the church. So church stage design ideas. We were trying to update the inside of our building, which was built in the 70s, had like chandeliers. It wasn't very reflective of what we were doing as a church. And so I was trying to figure out how to update our look inside. And so this kind of public research process or project that I set up was kind of a way to help me and also create a business out of it. So yeah, I always just, for me, it's fun. Like all of this stuff is fun. My Instagram content that I make, I was talking to a friend this morning. It's always just an experiment and fun and seeing if I can, get views, or if it's never anything like that serious, but it's always a lot of fun.
Yeah. And I'm glad you brought up your Instagram. You got 50,000 followers on your page, and I am personally entertained by all of your posts. So I appreciate you doing what you're doing, and man, you not only get the views, but you get the laughs, and that's awesome.
That's the goal.
Yeah, it's awesome, man. And might I add, you did one on LED walls, which I don't know, Jason, if you got it there, but man, this I don't know how you made that face, but it was pretty impressive. It reminded me of Ace Ventura when he would make those pretty interesting facial expressions there. But I love the content you put out there, man. You're just beaming of creativity, and I love that about you. Just overflowing with the websites and the books. So you mentioned, so you started churchstagesonideas.com, and then you recently sold that, right? Was it a year or
Mhm.
2 years ago?
Yeah, like a year and a half ago. That's
Yeah.
that's how I got my Airbnb, using the money from that. So,
Nice, nice.
yeah, church staging was a lot of fun. It was I ran it for maybe 10 years. So it was maybe even longer. It was a long running
Yeah.
project, and just got to see so much of what churches were doing around the world. Really, like there were churches in Africa, churches in Australia and Brazil, and all
Yeah.
obviously the U.S. as well. So it was a lot of fun.
Yeah. It was cool. I was a worship pastor in Long Island, New York, and I was using church stages on ideas before I even knew you. And
Mm,
my sister was a worship director at her church in San Diego simultaneously. And so I was sending her ideas that I would see on your site. And so San Diego to New York, my family all connected through your website, didn't even know you at the time. And it's just
yeah,
cool that, something you created it's helped thousands of churches that you probably don't even know about. So
yeah.
that's got
It's
to be
just
a
really
great
cool
feeling.
to. Yeah, I mean, I think the most fun thing about it was just seeing that people were feeling connected and feeling like they weren't alone. I think that's
Right.
it, as weird of a thing as it is. Like I wouldn't think that would come from just like an inspiration website, but it was the
Yeah.
idea of like, oh, I'm getting inspired by this church, and oh, that church is down the street. I didn't realize they were doing that. Like it was just cool to be able to see connections being made, from all those people being involved. Again, everything that I do is like, if it's not fun, I don't really want to do it. So it was very fun to see all of that community happening from it.
Yeah, yeah. So, kind of going back to your beginning, your father was a missionary. You were a
Hmm.
pastor's kid, missionary kid, and I'd imagine you were all up in the church, serving in every capacity that you had to. But at what point did you
Yeah.
realize that you wanted to be an entrepreneur within the church market and also, develop your creative skills at the same time? So that, because that entrepreneurial bug at some point it gets you, and
Yeah. I mean,
it sounds
I
like
had that from the beginning.
you've
Like
always had that.
yeah. I mean, when I was maybe 6 or 7, I think, we
Yeah.
would be in Guatemala, and I would have coins. And when we would come back to the US, I would sell those coins, which, like, it was like a 25 cent piece in Guatemala was worth like 5 cents here. And I would sell
Okay.
them for like 25 cents or $1. Just so, like, it wasn't currency trading, but kind of. But just like I would always find a way to, like, I'm
Yeah.
gonna make stress balls and sell them at school, or bookmarks.
Oh, that's
It was
cool.
always a game for me. It was always fun to kind of see, like, oh, can I make something that people will pay for?
Yeah.
Less about the money, more about the challenge, weirdly enough. Although
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
do appreciate money. Like, money helps me do things, which is nice.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the entrepreneurial bug has always been in me. I love doing
Nice.
that stuff. And then, I mean, I think working at a church, I just saw so many needs. My personal motto is to find a niche and scratch it.
Mm,
So I would always see these, like, oh, there's a need for this. Like, especially working at a church, I would, like, I mean, I would love having this type of resource available, and I would just
mm,
make it. And then
yeah.
it was just an obvious thing for me because it was
Yeah.
something that I could use. So surely some other people could use it. I never anticipated how many people could use it. I think with
Right.
church stages and ideas, I thought maybe, be like 100 people. I didn't know how many people were doing this type of stage design thing. So I thought maybe 100 people
Mm,
around the US would visit the site, and it was like thousands and thousands of people. And then Sunday Social too. I think when I was talking to my business partner about starting it, I'm like, maybe we'll get like 500 people signing up for it. Like, that'd be incredible. That'd be amazing. And
right.
we're closing in on close to like 5,000 now. It
Wow.
always shocks me how many people there are out
Mm,
there in the same boat.
yeah. Yeah. So Sunday socials, now that you mentioned that, that is that specifically for social media content, or is that for on your stage content?
Yeah. No, that's all social media content for churches. So, my role primarily is coming up with the actual content. What are we going to give churches to post? So I have kind of like I have a list of emotional and spiritual needs that I address. So, coming up with posts that talk about anger and forgiveness, or
Mm,
posts that that talk about, dealing with loneliness, dealing with
nice.
sadness. So there's like a strategy behind the content. We're not just, designing
Mm.
beautiful things, but we do have phenomenal designers on our team. But
Yeah.
yeah, so then the way it works, Sunday Social is like a library of content that you can hop on, and you can either use one of the 5 posts we suggest for every day, or just go through our library of like, I think it's like 9,000 posts that you can,
Wow.
choose what works well for your church.
Awesome. And what's the website for that site? Sunday Socials dot
SundaySocial.tv. SundaySocial.com
TV.
works well as well, but SundaySocial.tv is the official,
That's the cooler one.
one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. I
It
think
was
Jason.
cool when it was livechurch.tv, and then they switched to life.church, and I'm like,
Ah,
this TV doesn't make any sense for when it
yeah.
comes to social media, but it's all
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, I love that because a lot of churches can't afford to hire a full-time or even a part-time
Yeah.
social media manager. So this solves that problem. And when you can, I'd imagine they can edit and they can make it customizable to their own church verbiage or any of their
We have
business.
Photoshop files, and then Canva templates are becoming a bigger part of the site now. So a lot of
This is
ways that you can
awesome.
really customize it for what you need.
I love it. I love it. And this is a monthly model,
Yep.
monthly
Yeah,
subscription. Okay,
subscription.
cool.
So it starts at $10 a month for just ready to use graphics. It goes up from there. We have video now specifically
Mm.
made for like Reels and for TikTok. Yeah, a lot of really cool stuff that we developed there.
Yeah, yeah. Did you know you were going to go down this road? Have you always kind of known that, or did it just kind of happen?
It's always happened. So my dad's motto, and I think I model my life a lot after him. His motto in life is onward through the fog.
Mm,
He never, everyone talks about 5-year, 10-year plans. Like I have like a
yeah,
2-month plan. Like that's as far as I go in my life.
I can relate. Yeah.
Uh, Maybe for a trip I'll have like an 8-month plan, but I don't think very far ahead. Even with Sunday Social, when we started, we were only going to do square graphics. We weren't going to do Photoshop files. We were very like narrow focus, and then and we were like hard on that line. And then
Mm,
one month we're suddenly like, we should start changing our sizes, and then we did it. So
yeah.
I never really think, I never strategize too far in advance. I just kind of see, I don't know, I think of it like riding a wave. Like when you're
Yeah.
surfing, you don't know what the wave's gonna be like, but whenever you see it, you gotta get ready and you gotta adapt to it,
Mm,
right? I feel like that's any good business. You do that. You see the market trends, you see, oh, this gave me an idea. It's maybe not the right
yeah.
time, but I'm gonna keep it in the back of my head until it is the right time, and then you just go
Mm.
for it when it's right.
Yeah, that's so true. And the key word that I heard you say was adapt. And if you can
Mm-hmm.
adapt to whatever you're seeing in front of you, the situation, the opportunity, then
Yeah.
that's where you're going to be able to grow the most and be able to adapt to that situation and go to the next level. And
the
essentially, you've
cool
done
the
that.
cool thing about social media, yeah, and the cool thing about social media, the nature of Sunday Social is that we are providing a product for something that changes so rapidly. Like,
That's so true.
YouTube, Facebook, they weren't, I think it was like 2006 when they started, right? Like, so they haven't even been around 20 years. The industry in itself, and every 6 months, every year, things are changing drastically. So it
Hmm.
forces us to adapt, which is just the nature of the industry. And so I
Right.
think I don't know, it gives me a good canvas to work with. Like, okay, if we have to adapt to match what is happening on social media, then I can do that with a lot of other areas of the business too.
That is so true. And then you're sprinkling in, I say sprinkle lightly because a lot of people aspire to write one book, but you've managed to write how many books? 10
A
books?
few.
8 books? A few.
Eight maybe. Yeah, it's
Okay.
it's hard because like there's some that were like traditionally published, and then there's
Yeah.
some that were self-published, and then some that were like secondary books that were like underneath the main book. So I don't really know the
Yeah.
number, but quite a few.
Yeah. And that's impressive, man. I mean, I've had a book idea for the past 3 years. I've started it and stopped it, started to stop it.
Yeah.
And, I got 5 kids and I got a business and you got probably more than I do. But how do you find the time and the motivation and even the, solitude to get that done?
Yeah, interestingly enough, I think the last couple of books I wrote on my phone while I was walking, and
Okay.
that has been a really cool thing.
Nice.
just realizing that whatever tools I have, like I think the key is not being perfectionist about it. I think that's a lot of people, they want to do
Mm.
everything perfectly.
Yeah.
You know, if you look at my videos on social media, I probably could have taken another take. Like they're probably like, you know, I maybe took the early take when I should have done 10 more takes and gotten that 10th one, which would have been a little bit better.
Mm. Yeah.
But I feel like if I can get 80% of the way there, that's better than most people who never get there because they're trying to get it to the 100. Most
Right.
people give up. Most people give up after that 80%. They're like, I can't
Yeah.
get it to where I want, and so I'm going to stop.
Yeah.
And that's been my philosophy in launching businesses. I'm like, let's launch this thing again. Another one of my dad's mottos is let's build the ship while we're sailing. Like
Yeah.
you kind of launch it, you know, get the minimum viable product you can, and then let's make it better. Let's make it perfect as we're sailing. And it's never going to be perfect. You know, you're
Yeah.
never, you
Yeah.
know, the Nashville motto is the song is never done, right? The song is never
Hmm.
perfect, but you just at some point have to ship the song. I'd say the
Absolutely.
same thing is true with any product, any business.
I love that. Yeah, and that's for me. My personal motto has always been commit first, figure it out later, type of a
Mm,
mentality. And
yeah.
for some people,
You still have a
that's
deadline is huge.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely, and it's definitely evident in everything you're doing. And I love the books that you've put out there and the
Thanks.
businesses and the content. So Airbnb. So now you're an investor now.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. It's been fun. I
Yeah.
love the hosting aspect of it, of like talking to the guests. But yeah, it's a lot of work. So I just recently turned over to a manager to take over a larger portion of the process, just because it'll consume your time.
Yeah.
It definitely makes more money, like probably twice as much or three times as much money as if it was a long-term rental, but there's just way more activity involved in it. So that's
Yeah.
the tough balance of doing an Airbnb.
I know about it, man. I have two right now, and
Yeah,
you got a
you get
lot
it,
of
man.
turnover. You got cleaners. You have stains on the bed sheets, and you got
Stuff
some stuff.
breaking, yeah.
Yep, yep. And so I think it's a smart move
You
bringing
can't
on.
be too precious about it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I mean, you can't get too emotional or personally attached to certain things in the house because things are going to happen.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the first time there was like some stains on the bed. Like I think someone like brought some like really greasy tacos onto the bed, and like it soaked through like all layers. And my
Yeah.
wife was so personally affronted. She
Mhm.
was like the disrespect, and I'm like,
Yeah. Right.
it's just business. It's just money. Like we'll clean them, we'll get new sheets. Like it's not a big deal. But you can't be upset, otherwise you're just going to be like. And I mean, it's the same with business, right? Like if you get too upset
Yeah.
with like the rising and falling of industry of the market, it's going to stress you out, and
Yeah.
it has to be fun. I feel like that's
Absolutely.
just in general. You know, it's not always fun, but I feel like if the majority of it is fun, you can weather the times that are not fun.
Absolutely. You got to have fun at what you're doing. You got to love it. You got to be passionate about it and know that there are going to be hard times through it. And,
Yeah,
hopefully the good times and the fun times outweigh the challenges that come along with it. So what's next for you, man?
yeah.
And I know you're always looking ahead. So what do you have on the horizon?
I got nothing for the next 2 months. I got no. So I do.
Good.
I do have another. I have another book. So I have a writing partner that we're going to write a book probably
Nice.
in the next. Hopefully, we'll meet together in the next month or two and kind of start hashing out what that's going to be exactly.
Mm.
So that'll be probably in a year, I think, is when we're planning on releasing that
Okay.
at a conference that's going to be in May, I think it is. Yeah, so that's a book that we're going to be writing. And then this Pastor Rev thing that I'm launching, the sermon prep tools, is it's just fun to develop that. It's really cool to figure out how to get AI to give the results that are going to be helpful
Mm.
for pastors.
Okay.
Because if you've ever hopped on Chat GPT and asked it a question, it's like it really misses what you're like intending, right? It kind of misses
It does.
it misses the goal quite a bit. So
Yeah.
trying to figure out how to get exactly what we want for pastors is really fun. And then some cool stuff for Sunday Social. We'll be launching a new subscription on our Instagram that'll be helping churches figure out the trends that are happening
Mm.
with Reels.
Okay.
And and then a coaching group we're
Yeah.
launching to help really start people off on like the ABCs of social media for churches. So we'll be launching
Nice.
that hopefully in July. But yeah, a lot of things on the horizon, but nothing too revolutionary, but just stuff that's fun for me.
That is awesome. Pastor Rev, is that going to be a website or would that be a whole separate business?
It's up. It's pastorrev.com. It's already live.
Oh,
It's another monthly subscription, so $9 a month. It has I think it's like 20 something tools that help you with sermon prep, and there's other stuff too. So there's like youth group games. So you tell Pastor Rev, my website, you tell it, this is our topic we're talking about tonight. I want it to be really crazy, or I want it to be a little bit more like a little bit more illustrative of the topic.
yeah.
And then it'll give you like a really cool game that you can use, or I want to talk about this topic. Here's a way you can organize your sermon outline. Or I'm talking about in Proverbs. This one verse in Proverbs is about treating people fairly. I want to see other verses in Proverbs that are about that same topic. So a lot of really cool tools. Word search, understanding the original language of the word. Tapping into concordances, tapping into a lot of different resources that pastors use regularly, but just making it all really quick and really fast. And my partner on that project, he's like, I use it as a pastor and it saves me like 2 or 3 hours a week.
Wow.
Just using these tools. So a lot of really cool things that are on that site.
Yeah, that's incredible, because time is everything. And pastors, as you know, your dad was a pastor, a missionary, and what pastor has time to dive into graphics for? Now you have Sunday socials for social media, and now you can go to a one-stop shop for ideas for games and for sermons, and just help. I mean, that's huge, and to be able to offer that is awesome. I often talk about when I do some seminars at different conferences, that I believe that Jesus would have used the tools available if he were here today. Would he use AI? We've had that discussion many times. Would he use social media? Would he use websites? Would he use texting? What's your opinion on that?
Yeah, I actually got a comment yesterday, and I was really thinking about it a lot, because people call me an influencer on Instagram because I have a following, right? I don't think of myself as an influencer. My goal is to entertain, have fun, to make you think a little bit. Like I'm not trying to make you buy, a certain purse or a shirt. Like that's not my goal, right? Like I'm not like I don't call myself an influencer, but I'm like, would Jesus, and so the comment was, Jesus would hate the idea of Christian influencers. And I'm like, would he hate the idea of Christian influencers? And I don't think he would. If the goal is to actually make an impact on someone, if my goal is to be very vapid and like, hey, look at my cool shirt, it's $200, but you can get it if you're willing to pay that, like that. If that was the goal, Jesus would be like, I'm not really into that. But if the goal was to make people think, to challenge them, to maybe even use humor to kind of entertain, but to also get past those barriers of the walls that we put up, I think Jesus would totally be doing that. I mean, he said some very provocative things for that very purpose, to make people question what they thought.
Absolutely.
So would Jesus be an influencer? No. But would Jesus use social media to influence people? Yes, I believe so.
Right. Yeah, and I'm with you on that. Although, influencer, no. Influential, yes.
It's a negative word. It's a negative word, because really, like an influencer, like any influencer, I mean, my pastor's an influencer to me. He influences me to make decisions, right? Like that's not in and of itself a negative word, but we've dubbed it a negative word because we have a very specific thing we think of when we think of an influencer. Someone who's making a TikTok on a busy street, totally oblivious to the people walking around them. Maybe making people feel uncomfortable. Like that's what we think of when we think of influencer, but that's not really. An influencer is someone who influences, and that's not a bad thing.
It's not a bad thing, but you're right. We've tied it to social media. We've tied it to products. We've tied it to online sales. But I do believe that Jesus would be using all the tools at our disposal, at the disposal of the times, to share love and be motivational, and to share the peace of God, and ultimately to share the gospel. And yes, he would challenge people. He will get them to think. He would be controversial as well. Especially
his Twitter, his X account would be nuts.
Absolutely. I love that conversation, because it's basically what you're doing. You're using all the tools from written word and books to websites to social media to resource and motivate and equip the church. And that I believe is a calling. I love it. And man, I want to get you in front of this. You already have 50,000 followers, but anybody else that we can get you in front of, I want to be able to do that because I think that is what the body of Christ is. And you have a gifting for seeing something before it is and then creating it. And now it's a tool, and now the resources that we can use and churches all over the world can benefit from. And I love that you've been able to pull that out of you. And obviously the Lord has, given you the gifts and the vision to do that. But for others that might have,
Yeah.
you said your motto is when you have a niche, scratch it. Is that it?
Find a niche and scratch it. Yeah.
Find a niche and scratch
Yeah,
it.
a
I
little
love.
clever wordplay there.
I feel like that should probably
Yeah.
be a T-shirt of some sort.
Yeah.
But for other people, maybe they're in ministry, maybe they're in a full-time role, part-time role at a church, but they have this idea, or they have a, just something they've been holding on to and not releasing, whether it's a book or business or podcast or whatever it is. What would you say to that person?
Yeah. I would say start small and look for your first step. A lot of times, I talk to people all the time. And this is probably the worst thing that I've heard is people say, God gave me an idea.
Mm.
And that idea that they share, and I mean, I believe that God gives you ideas, right? But the idea that they share is it's going to be a 20,000 square foot building with 10 different departments, and there's going to be this and this, and they have this massive vision, right? It's going to cost millions of dollars to implement,
Yeah.
and that is terrifying because where do you even start with something like that, right?
Right.
Much better to have a vision from God saying, my vision from God is to encourage some people in this specific way, right? And I could do that 5,000 different ways. What's the easiest, simplest first step I can take in doing that? And I would take that step. Anytime that I start a business, I'm not willing to spend money. Like I'm not willing to, get investors on. I'm not willing to buy a property necessarily. Like I want to start small. I want to get that minimum viable product, like meaning
Right.
the concept, if you're not familiar with minimum viable products, is like if this alone was the product, it would work. So like the iPhone is the opposite of minimum viable product, right? Like a phone, it makes a call, it receives calls. That's a minimum
Right.
viable product. And then all the apps and everything, that's all stuff that developed over the 14 years we've had the iPhone or something, right? So if you look at the fully formed iPhone the way it is right now, it's overwhelming. I could never create something like that. But if you looked at a smartphone that, did some text and was maybe touchscreen, okay, I could maybe create that, right? So start small, start with the first step. Don't get such a precious big idea and dream that you're not able to accomplish it because it's too overwhelming.
Yeah. And same thing with the book too. Even for me, thinking of, okay, I got to write the book, then you got to publish it, then you got to print it, then you got to design the cover. Talk about the book process, because I know there's a lot of people, even pastors, that have books in them that should be released, but these details are bogging them down. Can you connect that to writing the book and the process that you've gone through?
Yeah. So I mean, the thing that I've learned the most about writing a book is that if you know exactly what you're going to write, it's easy to write. So what I do is I plan, I start with, okay, it's going to be 12 chapters. These are my 12 maxims is the way I approach it, where it's like 12 big thoughts, right? 12 big thoughts that are kind of all related. They kind of flow sequentially, but there's 12 big thoughts. And then one thought is a chapter. And then I think through that thought, okay, so what are the questions I have about that thought? What are some of the verses that, maybe even seem to disagree with that thought? I should address that. What are some verses that obviously agree with that thought? And then I just start organizing my thoughts, and then you write it. So, when you think about a book, a typical book is 40,000 to 50,000 words, which is overwhelming. But then if you say, okay, but it's 12 chapters, so it's really only like 3,600 words. I can write 3,600 words on a topic, right? So, and then that topic has 4 different parts, 4 different big ideas within that idea, right? So I'll separate that, and then that makes it 8,000 or 800 words for each topic, right? Like
Sure.
when you break it down to small pieces, those individual steps, it's doable. But if you're trying to tackle 50,000 words at a time, not going to happen, right? You just have to
Right.
say, okay, this is the piece I can work on right now. I'm not going to think about the rest of it. I'm going to do this, and then I move on to the next piece.
Yep, one bite at a time, one step at a time,
Mm-hmm.
and just look at that next step that in front of you. Forget about the others down the road, and keep moving forward.
Yeah, and then stories. I mean, the thing that I found the most is the thing that people like the most about my books is that I tell a lot of stories, and it's also the thing that makes it easy to write and easy to read. So I can spend, half of the chapter telling a story that really does more to prove my point than 50,000 words on that specific, trying to, reason you into the idea. If I can just tell you a really good story, you'll get the idea.
Awesome. That's awesome, man. Well, I'm glad you shared. I really appreciate you sharing everything you're doing. And I'm really hoping that inspired and motivated, influenced people out there to really tap into those creative gifts that we have. We all have them inside of us, and we all have something to give to the world. And for us believers that are also in business, the business itself is not only there to make money, but to serve people, serve our community, serve the church. And really, that's refresh. That's our motto, is to refresh others and build the kingdom. That's why we do what we do. And I'm excited to link up with like-minded people like you, man. So I appreciate you being here.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. What's the best way for people to connect with you or to follow you? And I know we got some of these socials.tv. We got pastorrev.com. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but on Instagram, you'll find everything linked. My books, you'll see my silly little videos, and you can respond and say mean things to me if you want, which people do sometimes. You can message me, and I love responding to people's questions.
You got it, man. You got it. We'll say some mean things to you and see what responses you give. Yeah. It's been awesome having you, man. I really appreciate it. Thank you for joining us on the Bright Business Podcast. Thank you for everything you're doing. You're a blessing to the world, and it's just awesome to connect with you.
Yeah.
Awesome, man. Thanks, Jonathan. Have a good one.